May 2022, just a few weeks ago, Microsoft finally released the preview version of .NET MAUI. We've been waiting for .NET MAUI for a while, and this is the successor to Xamarin to create cross-platform or multi-platform apps. MAUI is an acronym for Multi-Platform App UI. It is part of Visual Studio, and we will use C# to create applications for Android, iOS, and Windows, just as we do with Xamarin. But now we can also do Mac OS. We can do Tizen, and Tizen is a OS put forth by the makers of Linux and Samsung, and it's used in like Samsung TVs and so forth. We can also create web hybrid apps for those different platforms along with Microsoft Blazor. The features are kind of the same as what Xamarin had. It's a shared interface using XAML, Extended Application Markup Language, that we've used for years for creating interfaces for iOS and Android with C# in Xamarin. The shared code behind being C#, and we can access the device sensors such as the GPS, the camera, the accelerometer, and so forth, and it natively compiles for each platform. So a button designed in the interface that's shared will look like an Android button on an Android device and look like an iOS button on an iPhone. We've also talked about the software development lifecycle, or SDLC, and so when I get a new program to learn, a new programming language or new development tools, I like to have a good project just to play around with it. Give me something to shoot for and see how I would develop that project. So it's also a great opportunity to demonstrate on a project the software development lifecycle. So I'm going to try to do both things here. My project is to create a Wordle type app. So if you play Wordle on the New York Times site, it's a very popular daily puzzle. My frustration with Wordle, though, is you get one puzzle a day, and I want to have more than that. I wanted to create an app where I could play a Wordle-style word guessing game multiple times without having to wait 24 hours. So that was going to be my goal. As we look back to the software development lifecycle, we have our need. I want to develop this Wordle-style game. We're going to do our planning and look at the assessment IPO, the interface design, and the algorithms. And then we'll start to build our interface, code it, test and debug, and make changes along the way to make sure it works, and then we would deploy it ideally through the Google Play Store or through the iPhone store. In my case, though, I'm making this for myself, so I might just deploy it to my own phone, which I've already done. So let's take a look at the IPO. So thinking about our programs as input, process, output, in this case there's going to be several stages of input, process, and output. The first stage, we're going to have a little splash title screen come up with a continue button or let's play button. And then it's going to process our game board by grabbing a target word out of a list of words. And actually, there's about 5,600 words that are 5 letters. And we're going to build those all into our program. And our output is basically tell the user we're ready to play the game. We're going to get inputs from the user. The user is going to enter 5 letters to create a word. And we're going to evaluate that word and see if it matches the target word. We're going to give feedback on each of the letters visually by color coding them in terms of whether that letter is in the right spot or that simply is a letter in the word but in the wrong spot. We'll visually update an app keyboard as well, helping the user to choose what letter should be in the next word. They will have 6 tries to figure out the 5-letter word, and we will give them feedback on whether they win and whether they don't win at the end of those 6 tries, or if they solve it earlier. Along with that, we're going to track our stats and present some statistics, and then here's the key thing, let them play again, and we'll go back up and start another target word and repeat the process. So that's our IPO, and now for our interface design, I'm going to use a storyboard. And I just simply sat down with paper and pencil and sketched out what I thought my program would look like. We have a little logo at the top, our 6 different words, each of 5 letters, and the user will have a keyboard built into the app that they can click on the keys to place letters in the letter spots above, and then to submit and get feedback. And you'll see just some notes here that I made as far as how I was going to color code this. This is just a really quick sketch, but it helped me put to paper and pencil what I was envisioning in my mind and how I was going to design this with a stack and some horizontal stacks with labels and buttons and so forth. My plan was to do a pie chart of the statistics. I haven't done that. Instead, I just have a text-based report on the statistics, and eventually this might be the next phase as we talk about the software development life cycle of how would I improve the game in that next phase. So I'm going to readjust the need and continue to build this over a longer period with different variations or different versions of the application. The algorithms of how I was going to design this, I tend to do a lot of those in my head. They tend to be more of a mental process. In this case, since it's event-driven, the events functions are all pretty short, and I didn't necessarily need to sit down and flowchart those out or pseudocode those out. And because of my experience, I'm able oftentimes to do that well in my head, where you as a starting developer may need to really sit down and pseudocode and flowchart before committing that to code. So I needed to gather some assets. Actually, in this case, I created assets. So in Photoshop, I created my logos for my application. So a larger logo is going to be part of my splash screen, and then a kind of a banner logo to be at the top of the application. Here then is my application running in an emulator, an Android emulator. So here's our splash screen with that graphic that you saw I created in Photoshop. I've got a Let's Play button, an instructions button. I'm going to click Let's Play. It's going to take me to the game board screen. I'm told that a 5-letter code word has been selected. Try to break it. Click OK. And here then is my game. So you'll see that we have 6 words of 5 letters each, and the little highlighting of the yellow shows me what my current letter is, and a keyboard down here. So I can enter a 5-letter word and click Submit and get feedback on the letters that I chose. A letter highlighting green means that letter is in the word and in the right spot. One in orange means the letter's in the word but not in the right spot. So my word ends in an L and there's an A in it. So I'm going to add another word. This is my favorite where the A goes, but also there's an S or an N. Click Submit. Oh, and I actually got really lucky here. I wasn't anticipating that, but I got 4 letters in the right spot. So all I need to do is figure out what that 3rd letter is. And it's probably pretty obvious that the word might be navel. Now notice I missed the A. There's a back button here. I can go backwards. If I put a word in that is not a word, click Submit, I get feedback that that is not a valid word, into backspace and try again. So I can only enter legitimate words. Click Submit. I got it right, and it gives me some feedback then that right now I've got 100% wins in one game. This is my first game, and it's going to show me as I continue to play and solve these puzzles how many times I solve it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 tries, or perhaps not at all, because my stats may not always be 100%. I can click OK. I'm asked if I want to try a new word. I'm going to say yes. However, I put a repeat button in here as well. And the reason I did that was if you're playing this game and you solve it in 4 tries, you can repeat the word, clear the screen, and have somebody else try to solve that same word that you're with and see if they can beat your score. I'm just going to simply say yes, and now I'm told a 5-letter keyword has been selected. Try to break it. So that's the game. Let's take a look at this quickly in Visual Studio and the production of this. One thing to note is I'm working in the preview version of Visual Studio 2022. There's the public release version, and the preview version has some features that are not yet publicly released but are available to anyone. It simply tells me there's probably still a few bugs that Microsoft's working out. In the preview version, looks just like normal Visual Studio 2022, I can choose to create a new project. And one of the choices is MAUI. That's not in the public version of 2022, it's only in the preview. And you'll see there are 3 different types of projects using .NET MAUI that we can create. We can create an app. We can create a Blazor app using the web support for Blazor. This would be a hybrid app where we have an app on our phone that's native but also tying in information or launching a web version of the app. And then a class library for .NET MAUI. So we would create the .NET MAUI app and give it a name. Choose Next, and also notice all the different platforms that are available to us. And I click Create button, and that would create our application. Let me jump over to that. The coding of my project in .NET MAUI is no different than what I would have done in Xamarin Forms over the last several years. We're going to create XAML interface pages and then new code behind in C#. So nothing new there, but what is totally new is the layout in the Solution Explorer. We no longer have multiple projects for each of the different platforms we want to support. Instead, it's all one project. And inside that project, you'll notice there's now a platforms folder that references those different platforms. So the Android folder contains our Android manifest. The iOS folder contains our info.plist and so forth. So everything now is grouped together. We have our shared resources amongst all of our projects, including fonts, images, any raw data. So here's where I put my text files that contain all the 5-letter words. And then we have our XAML code with the underlying C# code. I was hoping maybe with .NET MAUI we'd see more of a drag and drop toolbox for controls, much like we have in WinForms, or which you might find in Android Studio for native Android development, or Xcode with the storyboards for iOS app development. But alas, they didn't do that. However, we do have the hot reload in Visual Studio with .NET MAUI. And so I can have my emulator running and make changes to my XAML code. So I'm going to add a exclamation mark here after let's play. If you watch over here on the right hand side, when I do that, you'll see it very quickly adds that in. So it's a live preview, actually a live working view of my application. So I just accidentally clicked the let's play button and it took me to the next page. So you can see it all works, but as I make changes in XAML, it's reflected very, very rapidly in the emulator. And then behind the XAML is our C# code. So this is allowing me to navigate to my play page. Same thing, here's the game page XAML. And also we have our properties panel over here, so I can either change colors here, so I can maybe try and have this highlighted in yellow. I want to have this highlighted in lime. You know, so it reflects again very quickly over here. Or I could change this and choose a color value in the properties panel. Again, very fast response times. So I'm going to go back to yellow. So there's my XAML code. Now that looks maybe a little intimidating for those who are starting out, say in the Python class, but most of this was I copied and pasted. I created one word here going across, copied and pasted, and just changed a few names. Here's the C# code, and you'll see that it's about 364 lines of code here. That's sort of exaggerated a little bit because we've got all of our structure with the brackets and a lot of blank lines and a lot of places where I added in comments and so forth. So, so really there's only about 300 lines of code, and that's pretty amazing that we can create this game in about 300 lines of code and all the interface and have it functioning. And this is a fairly advanced project. Probably took me about 10 hours overall to design, create the graphics, play around with .NET MAUI, and develop this app. So that's a very quick preview of .NET MAUI and creating a project in it and the SDLC lifecycle, demonstrating that through the creation of a project. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the C# Xamarin Programming Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.